Hi, loves, and welcome to the With Love Always podcast, a podcast to help you live the life you were created for. We are your hosts and your friends, Bree
and Marissa,
and we're so grateful you're here.
We pray you listen and leave feeling more inspired, encouraged, and uplifted. Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode. In today's episode, we're going to be talking all about the toxic side to productivity. So we're going to be unpacking what exactly that is, why productivity can be toxic if we're not careful, and also what kind of the solution is to that. So I'm excited for this conversation. I feel like it's one of those where I just had a bunch of thoughts. I wrote them all down and I was like, okay, what's the through line to this? And it was talking a lot just about how I think we need to sometimes reframe our view of productivity. And if we're not careful, we can actually lean to a side of it becoming like a toxic motivator for us. And I absolutely speak from personal experience, and we can share a bit about that. And I know Bree does as well. So we are recovering from this. And I wanted...
I'm in recovery.
Yes.
Meaning I don't know if I've even started working on this. I'm going to be honest.
Hey, the first step is acknowledging
I am very toxic with my productivity.
At least we're aware that this is something we both need to work on.
Yeah. And we struggle with. And also, like, I see friends in my life too that we all wonder like why we're feeling so exhausted and burnt out. And it's because we're literally finding way too much of our worth in what we're doing. And that's why we want to talk about it today. Honestly, literally we say it with like every episode. We don't talk about things that we don't struggle with. Like there's nothing that we have talked about that we're like, oh, got it. Like, I'm done. Like, we're never going to struggle with that again. Like, yeah, secured. No. We talk about it because we literally are struggling. And I'm like laughing because I'm like thinking about how hard I was struggling with that this week. And yeah, we're going to dive on into it and keep it real as always.
I mean, truly, I feel like so many of my thoughts, people are like, how do you have such formed opinions on things? And I'm like, because this is what God teaches me, like in my quiet time. He's like, Marissa, you kind of need to work on this.
Yeah.
And if you're not careful, these giftings or these things that ultimately, I think it's good to desire to be productive. I think we're actually made to be that way.
Yeah.
Yet so many of us can let it lead to a place that is not actually healthy. So yeah, I'm not sure if this is even a term. So I just made up a definition. If you guys are like, what are you talking about? And I'm going to define it as toxic productivity is the pressure to feel productive for productive sake, or it's the lie that doing more is always better. Do you have any definitions for this?
Yeah. Let me think of something off the whim. But like, honestly, I mean, I'm just thinking of like the personal voice in my ear when I'm being toxic in my productivity is that I am worth more the more that I do.
Ooh.
Yikes. That one really hurt as I said it out loud. And I think when I see it in myself or when I see it in my friends who struggle with always needing to accomplish or always doing something, it's because we have correlated our worth and identity with being the doer or being the accomplisher or being so able to accomplish a million things that someone's looking at you and they're like, how are you doing it all? And secretly you're drowning because you're exhausted.
Because I'm burnt out.
Because I'm like literally overextending myself. But that's where the toxicity is coming in. It's like you are so convinced that the more that you do, the more worthy you are and the more recognition you receive and the more worth you have here on this earth. I'm literally speaking to myself.
And that's what's so hard. I feel like the reason why it's something that I think we just so want to encourage today is because if you are somebody who is labeled as productive, that's often something that is very praised. Like that is something that in the workplace, you get praised for it in your personal life. People admire it. And it's something that people are really quick to point out. And naturally, when you are praised for something, you're going to want to keep doing more of that. And you're going to want to almost like amp that up even more and be like, well, if I could get all of this done, like imagine if I just kept doing that. And it's such a temptation. And I think today I just really want to remove a lot of those stereotypes with productivity that even if they're praised, I kind of want to share why they actually can be dangerous and actually truly might prevent you from accomplishing what it is that you actually want to accomplish. So to kick it off, I just was going to share some signs so that we all can just take a moment, reflect, see if this is something that
you're struggling with.
Exactly. Yeah. So here are some signs in my own life and things I notice when this is how I'm leaning. Number 1, struggling to relax or unwind or simply just do nothing. And I think a caveat to this is when you also feel the need to always like document what you're doing and then also to stay connected digitally. I know that was a lot, but I feel like it's all under the same umbrella. And like, yeah, staying connected digitally. I notice that even now, even though I'm like more so off social media, I will check my work email on the weekends and all these things. And I literally just think it's for that like search for dopamine, like to be completely honest, just that like satisfaction I get of like instantly responding to an email.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why do I enjoy this so much? Like I need to, like this is good in some areas, but I need to contain it.
Yeah. Ooh, that's like such a red flag for me, which it's like, that's how you know boundaries have just been crossed with like your productivity. I will do that. It's like the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is check my email. I'm like, whoa, that's adult of me. But also like, why is my mind like also creating these like rhythms of stress and anxiety and productivity that it's like I'm being hardwired to lean towards accomplishing something from the moment I wake up. It's like, let's not do that.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Okay, the second one is one we kind of already touched on, which is attaching your self-worth to how productive you are, how much you accomplish. And if you're like debating, okay, do I do that or not? I feel like for me, I notice that I don't feel confident if I don't feel like I'm accomplishing something. Like there's a direct correlation of like how confident I am in my like specifically professional life, but even personal as well, to like being able to say like, oh, I'm so busy or I'm doing all of these things. Like there's a sense of confidence that comes from that.
Yes. Or like, I mean, to be honest, even like marathon training, like can be a form of toxic productivity, if you will. Like it's such a beautiful like goal to accomplish, but even like post training for me, I'm like, well, what is the big thing I'm working on now? Like, what's the big goal I'm working towards? And to be absent of a goal and to feel like a loss of purpose is like, I would say a normal struggle that most people who marathon train go through, but also more so is revealing of like, wait, I shouldn't be attaching my sense of worth or identity to the extremities of goals or things I'm accomplishing. Like I should be able to stand alone, independent of an accomplishment.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The third one for me is saying things like, if I just do more, things will be better. For me, I notice this when I feel like I'm anxious and my solution is, well, if I just do this thing in my personal life, like if I just see more people, if I just fix our home to be this way, like if I just accomplish this in work and get this project done, like then everything will be fine. Mm-hmm. And it's like that almost that desire because things are feeling like they're kind of out of control. So I'm using external things to gain a sense of control in my life. And there's just no correlation to that. Like that's not a healthy way to process my emotions. So that's a big one for me.
Yeah, that's a good one. Another one is struggling to have work boundaries and not being able to have a sense of your own capacity and like what you can realistically take on. Oh my gosh. This is my number one struggle in my whole entire life. Not knowing my capacity, overbooking my weeks. That is a huge sign of toxic productivity, of like you're overextending yourself, you're overbooking yourself. And even for me, it goes to the links of I will accidentally like make plans with two people on the same day at the same time because I am so disconnected from my capacity and so disconnected from the reality of where I'm inviting my time and where I'm placing my time, that I just like have no sense of what I realistically have time for. And yeah, that is the detriment of you. And also even with boundaries, like work boundaries or with friendship boundaries of like, I notice even for myself when I'm like really struggling with that toxic kind of pattern is that I don't have boundaries, or I can't make a decision on what I want to do with my time in regards to work of like, oh no, I'll just work really, really late at night, or oh, I'll just like see a friend even though I don't really want to see a friend. It's like you lose all sense of yourself in order to accomplish things, in order to squeeze things into a calendar, in order to just get it all done. And I know for myself, that's where I can see signs I'm being toxic is when like I'm like squeezing in time with a friend just to get it done for the week, almost like check it off like a to-do list, not like spend quality time because I desire.
Yeah.
No offense, friends, but like there's times I do feel that way because I'm in my own toxic cycle of get things done, see every single friend, do, not connect. That's a big one. So if that's you, listen up. And then another sign is being reactive versus proactive. And I think that kind of even goes hand in hand. It's like you are just like always reacting to circumstances. And if anything, for me, it's like that actually starts coming from a place of like, because I'm not being proactive and I'm not planning ahead, or I'm not, being present with my capacity, or I'm not being present with my boundaries or what I realistically have time for, or what's a realistic goal for me to achieve, I find myself allowing things to fall to the wayside. And therefore that causes me to be so like reactive in moments, whether it's like reactively giving my yes or reactively having to pick up slack where I like left off because I'm overcommitting myself, like whatever that looks like. I think we all know what that feels like when you just feel like you're just reacting to everything in your life and you're just trying to like pick up the pace because you cannot keep up. That is actually the worst feeling. Another one I want to add too is like when you just constantly feel like you are almost like isolating yourself in your productivity. At least for myself, like I can see moments where it's like which there is a give or take. Like there's times to like sacrifice time with friends because you're like, hey, no, like I want to, catch up on posting on Instagram, or I want to finish this goal, or I want to write a podcast outline. Like that is a priority. But if you're consistently, at least for myself, I'm literally speaking to myself. If I'm consistently like, every single night of the week, all I want to do is sit and like accomplish something, write an outline, catch up on emails, do whatever it is to like give me a sense of productivity, advancement, accomplishment. And I'm literally doing that at the expense of seeing people that love me. And I'm like withdrawing myself and starting to isolate myself. That is a sign, at least speaking for myself, isolation, that I am in the toxic productivity cycle.
Oh, those are all so good. And I feel like that brings us to the next section, which is just why it is so negative. And I think you can hear in those signs that, okay, if you're catching these things, you probably are made aware that that's probably not a good thing. But I think the main thing that I've been made aware of why I do believe this is actually such an issue is not only does it burn you out, deplete you, all of those things, but toxic productivity truly distracts and depletes you from doing the very thing that you were put on this earth to do. I believe it gets in the way of our purpose. Yes, we maybe are meant to accomplish multiple things like be a mom, be a wife, have a job, have a passion project, all these things. But I do think adding these extra things for productivity's sake, or even just like showing up and doing them to such an extreme, like overextending yourself as a mom or overextending yourself in the workplace, going after goals that like truly aren't on your heart to begin with, I think that distracts us from our ultimate purpose. And I do believe there is a through line of like, if we all were to sit back, we could say like, this is my purpose. My purpose is to show up well in these spaces, and it's to show up and to love other people or be so present in these ways. And I think when we're just so caught up in the grind of just doing more, we miss the opportunity to show up 100% ourselves, 100% offering like great capacity and being the best version of ourselves. And it doesn't actually lead to ultimately what we want to do. It's kind of like that quick satisfaction, not getting us to the ultimate like sense of our purpose and growth.
Yeah. It's like the feeling of you are doing so much and you're like constantly exhausted, constantly stressed. And though you're doing so much, you still feel like you're doing
It's
nothing.
like never enough. Yeah.
Yeah. You're like, I'm never doing anything good enough. You're so overwhelmed. That is like so me. Like I'm actually in the middle of this cycle where it's like breakdown after breakdown. And I'm like, why am I so exhausted? And why do I feel so disconnected from myself? It's like, because I'm like running on a hamster wheel and I'm not being intentional with the things I'm saying yes to. I'm not being intentional with my time. I'm trying to overextend myself. And it just is like the greatest contradiction, one of the greatest contradictions of life. It's like you're doing so much, but at the same time, you're simultaneously not doing anything at all. Like, if that even makes sense. Like, gosh, I was having a conversation the other day and I literally was like crying. And I was like, I feel like I just do so much more than the average person. And it's like, okay, you know, we all feel that way sometimes. And there's times when that's true. And that could be true of all of us. And I always say, nobody knows what you're going through but you. Nobody is bearing the load, the burden, accomplishing the tasks that you are. But it's like I would say, though that can be true, that sense of like burden does not need to persistently exist. And that is the telltale sign that something is off here. And I know for me, it's like, I've honestly been in that cycle and it is really negative because like, I think, you know, speaking on behalf of purpose, like one of my purposes in life is honestly, you know, like the podcast or just like sharing my voice, being encouraging, being a really present friend and really extending myself in my relationships in my life. And I've even seen lately, it's like, feel like I'm showing up like it's such a depleted version of myself that I'm not like encouraging always from like a place of overflowing joy. Like feel like I'm giving half of myself. And even yesterday I was thinking about it. Like I was with some of my coworkers and I mean, yesterday was a day for me, but I was with some of my coworkers and I actually like texted one of them after and was like, hey, you know, I feel like my mind was really mentally preoccupied and I'm sorry that I wasn't as present as I would want to be. And even if they didn't notice that, like I can feel it in myself. And that is a negative byproduct of trying to be productive and trying to overextend myself, you know?
That's so good. And yeah, it's too relatable.
It's a toughie.
So that brings us to what I feel like is probably the most important part of this conversation, which is the solution. We maybe have identified some areas in our life that are leaning a bit more towards the toxic side of productivity, but what the heck do we actually do about it? And I think for me, initially when I was thinking about it, it was really tempting to think, okay, I just need to set more boundaries. I just need to rest more. I just need to do this. And although rest is great, boundaries are amazing, all of those things, again, that's still even like, it's me making lists of like more things I need to do. And ultimately what I think the key part is finding a sense of freedom in recognizing that less is actually more. And just because we can do something doesn't mean we should do something. And I think ultimately there is a gap in our identity that feels like in order to feel a sense of fullness in our worth, we derive value by what we are able to physically offer, not intrinsically who we just are in being.
Yeah.
And that is something that I think for me has been so transformational as I'm on this journey and I'm having to confront things and just accept the fact that I am enough apart from what I'm capable of doing. Mm-hmm. And I actually need to lean more into that and not find value in the workplace, in a title, in any of these like extrinsic things, but focus on who I ultimately am.
Yeah. And can I just say though, that is a foreign concept. Like when you actually think about it, it's like you who might be listening would be like, what are you even talking about? Like, isn't our worth composed of the things we do and the things we've accomplished? Like, I think that is actually the most countercultural perspective that we can offer. It's like, would you believe that you are valuable if you were never known by one thing you did? Like if you walked into the room and you were the least productive, least accomplished, least good looking, whatever, like would you believe you have value? Honestly, would I be able to say yes? No, probably not. But like there is a deeper sense of value like that we want to like encourage so beyond all these accessories and things that we like hand ourselves to like acquire purpose. Mm-hmm. You are literally so valuable simply because there is breath in your lungs, because you exist, because there's no heart that's like yours, because you are one of a kind. You were literally made in the image of a perfect God. But that is such a foreign concept to us. Like we do not live in a world that promotes that. We live in a world that promotes the toxic side of it, that you are more valuable the more followers you have, the more eyes that are set on you, the more things you accomplish, the more money you make, the more this is that. And it's like, those are all beautiful things. We're never going to encourage not to seek after those things if those are your goals. And we're not going to ever discourage the activism that is required for you to accomplish big, grandiose things. Mm-hmm. But if you never had a accomplishment attached to your name, if you never had the defining characteristic of being productive attached to who you are described as, would you still think you are worthy? Like, would you still believe you have identity? Would you still show up joyous, loving, a friend? Like, would you still walk into a room of people who are far more accomplished than you and actually believe, you know what, apart from these accomplishments, apart from the money, the wealth, the this or that, I still feel so valuable. Like that is literally the most rare perspective, if not like it is such a small few percentage of people, including myself, that doesn't always fall into that, that actually walks into a room, pursues a life in which I believe that. But let me just say the ultimate solution, I mean, there's so many things that we want to touch on, but the ultimate solution to curing your toxic positivity is, I would say, pressing into what your true identity actually is. It's like knowing who you are independent of anything you've ever done and ever accomplished. Like I said, that might be the most foreign concept you've ever heard. You're like, I wouldn't even know where to start. There's so much about you that is so much more valuable than anything that anybody can add to your life, than anything that can be added or taken away. I think that's such a good place to start. What are things about you that cannot be added or taken away? That is the place where true identity and worth is found. Who you are innately, the heart that you have innately, the perspective you have innately. Like those are the things that nobody can take from you.
Yeah.
People can take your success. People can take your job title. People can take your money. People can take you can be replaced at work. You can be replaced in so many different areas, unfortunately. But what is the thing that nobody can replace you with? It's like, nobody can replace me in the friend I am to this person. No one can replace me in the words that I choose over someone else. No one can replace me in the way that I see the world, or, like those are the sources to start rooting yourself in versus the things that are adding additional value to you.
Okay. Wow. That is so good. And I think it's one of those things where unless you come from a place of fullness, if you are always seeking, if you are always trying to prove something, achieve something, how can you truly offer anything that is of real value?
Yeah.
I think it's not until you have such security, such assurance that you can operate from a place of overflow. And that the irony is that if you truly want to be somebody who is truly productive, not by the world standards, but actually has impact, you need to be in your fullness of identity and able to walk out your purpose, not because you're trying to earn or achieve something, but because you just intrinsically are able to operate from who you are.
Yeah.
And I really something that I feel like God has just been reconstructing in my mind is the plan that He has for me, the purpose that I am meant to walk into, the fullness that He has prepared. It's not something that I am going to have to force from such an extreme, from a place of depletion, or a place from it's not going to burn me out. It's something I get to walk into. And it doesn't mean it won't be hard or that it won't take time. I think good things do take time and they take work, but they take work from a different standard than the world says. They take work when we are able to get up and actually have fullness in our heart so that we actually can pursue our purpose, because it's just something that's a byproduct of who we are. And it's something we enjoy doing and have passion and have energy for. And that has been so freeing to me, where I don't feel, I'm getting there. I do feel sometimes, but I'm starting to not feel the pressure of when I feel myself at capacity, I can actually just pause and say, if this was meant for me, it would not cost me this.
Yeah, that's so good.
I am able to offer what I've meant to offer in my capacity that has already been designed. God knows what I need to deliver, and He has equipped that innately from me. And it should not lead me to such a severe place or such a toxic place. And I think when you can start operating from that place, not only is it such a weight off your shoulders, but it actually allows you to do things that truly are meaningful and that fill your soul and fill the room and fill up other people's cup. And I think that is when we can truly have a life of so much meaning.
That is literally so powerful. And that's something that I have to surrender constantly. It's yes, we are invited. We have an invitation here on earth to work hard, to persevere, to show up in so many beautiful ways. But if you are constantly feeling like you're striving all the time, it's nonstop striving, nonstop feeling like you're not good enough, you're not doing enough, nonstop feeling the exhaustion, that even you accomplishing the things that you think you want, if it is at the expense of yourself, it's never going to be enough. And you will be enslaved. And that is an intense word, but you will literally be enslaved to that pattern for the rest of your life. And that's where it's you need to recognize and you need to check in with yourself. It's at what expense is this actually worth it to me? Is the recognition, is the accomplishment, is the notoriety, is the whatever it is it worth it enough that I am losing myself in the process? For some people, they will say yes. And especially in a city like LA, we see a lot of absolutely yes, I will do whatever it takes to get to where I think I want. But then you get to that place and it's the most empty, unfulfilling place in the world because it was at the expense of everything you had. And that is I remind myself that of all the time. And given we are, of course, always coming from the perspective of believing in God and having faith in God. But the thing is me at my absolute best, striving to the ultimate capacity and my ability is not even capable of accomplishing the things that God already has for me. Like, what is for me is innately for me. And yes, I get to partner with God, and I get to work hard, and I get to be disciplined and diligent and faithful and fruitful in living and abiding by a beautiful purpose that's assigned over my life. But it's not going to be at the ultimate cost of like my heart, my soul, my capacity. Like, what God can accomplish in one moment is greater than what I can accomplish being a slave to my schedule, to my to-do list. Like, he can do far more than I can. So if that is the motive for me to actually be like, okay, I surrender, like nothing I can do will be enough to get me to the places I think I want to go. So God, fill the gaps where I fall so short. Because at the end of the day, I always remind myself, like, if God wants me to be successful in this thing or this goal, or, you know, achieve this level of success, whatever it is, he will get me there in the timing that is meant for me. It is not going to be at the expense of my well-being and my livelihood. And I'm not going to have to force myself to fit into this box in order to achieve something. Like, he will allow me to achieve it and bring me to the means to achieve it in his timing. And if it's not happening, it's not happening because it's not for me, you know, like, and
so good.
That makes me rest. I'm like, okay, maybe I'll never be successful here. I don't want it if it's going to be at the cost of my soul. Like, I literally don't want it. Like, take it.
That reminds me of the verse where it's like, to gain the world, but forfeit your soul.
Yeah.
And it's like, if that is breaking you, it is the protection and signal that that was not meant for you, and you just need to stop and release it.
Yeah.
And that is the freedom I am starting to experience. And I'm just like, wow, why was I trying to force these things that were never intended for me? And I know that sounds scary, and you're like, okay, well, I don't know if I'm going to keep my job with that. I don't know if I'm going to keep my friendships with that. Honestly,
my relationships with that. Yeah.
It might be crazy, but truly, I don't know if you're supposed to. Like, I know that might be a bit of a hot take, but I just, again, be discerning with it. Sometimes we are called to do really hard things, but we are not called to break ourselves in that like extreme striving means. Like, that is just not what is for us. And so I think to conclude this conversation, I just wanted to share what I think is the ultimate example of productivity, and that is actually Jesus's ministry. And if you're not familiar, he essentially was a carpenter. That is what he apprenticed under his father, was trained to do. His actual ministry, the ministry that we know and love and hear the Gospels are written about, was actually just 3 short years, which to me is wild.
Crazy. That
it was only 3 years. Imagine if we were preparing for a moment that was only 3 years long, and the life-changing impact that has had on our lives and the world. And what I love is, as I look at his ministry, it's not coming from a place of depletion. Like, yes, he's God, but he also is fully human when he's here on earth. So he has a human-like capacity. And the moment he gets baptized and he's about to start his ministry, he goes off and fasts in the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights. And it's just wild to think, like, the moment you're anointed, the moment you're ready to step out and do the thing you're called to do, and you actually take a step back, remove yourself, and decide to rest and restore and prepare your spirit for 40 days and isolate yourself. And then you just see that throughout his ministry of like him always retreating and just spending time to be filled back up by the Father. And I just think that's such a beautiful depiction of, it's not about how much we do, it's about how we show up in what we're doing and who we invest in, and the intentionality, and when we partner with God, the impact that can have. And man, is that convicting, and something that I just want to emulate in my life, and not be focused on what I think productivity looks like, and just allow myself to partner with God and spend time for Him to give me direction, purpose, identity, so that I can step out and be productive by His means and not the world's.
Yeah.
And just watch how that can truly have such a beautiful, beautiful life and a beautiful impact.
Yes. And I think something I even want to note, like, I know so many of our listeners are like in their 20s. Like, I think about Jesus, he literally, we don't know much about his life at all until he's 30 something.
Yeah.
You know, like we always guess like 31, 32, 33. I don't think we actually know 100%, but it's like it wasn't like Jesus banging out this ministry in his 20s, like,
which he could have.
He could have
traveled the world, done it till he was 80.
Yeah.
Like he had the capacity more than any of us.
Yeah.
And yet that's not what he had to do.
Yeah. And also it's like, whoa, let's let that thought sink in, so it extends so much grace over us in our 20s. We are literally like programmed nowadays to think that our 20s are it. If we are not doing it in our 20s, what are we doing? We're falling behind. The fact that I've even had this dialogue with myself, like with my birthday coming up and being like, oh my gosh, I'm not as accomplished as I want to be at this age. I'm not where I thought I'd be. I'm not financially this. It's like, I have to almost reel myself back. Your 20s is not about accomplishing absolutely everything you can accomplish. For some people, it will be. Let that be their story. It does not have to be yours. Like we're literally all just beginning. And if Jesus didn't accomplish the greatest thing in his life until his 30s, also don't let that put pressure on your 30s either. But like, you have time. There is time.
You have time.
Yeah, there's so much time. Like your life is intended to like be one of endurance, not like speed work. You're not meant to be gassed every single day, day in, day out by what you're doing. Mm-mm. And I also think like even with Jesus, it's so convicting for me too, like regardless of where you stand, even with like faith, everyone knows the name of Jesus. It's like, think about how crazy that is. That is insane. Like he was alive a long time ago, you guys, like a long time ago, like on this earth. And the impact he's had on this world, that he is to this day a renowned name that will continue forward long beyond a long time and
eternity.
And he only has 3 years of like major ministry documented. And in that time, when he was exhausted, he would literally be like, peace out, guys. I'm going on the mountain. And then his friends would be like, can we come? And he's like, no. Like, I need to go be by myself. Why are we not doing that more? Like,
why are we not going on a mountain?
Why are we not running away into a mountain? No, but like, actually, it's like, why are we not giving ourselves a space to be like, peace out? Like,
go to that mountain, girl.
Yeah. Girl retreat.
But with all of that, I just hope you guys felt just a safe space in this conversation, because I think we all have been victims to toxic productivity. And it is something that, because it's so ingrained in our minds, it takes a lot of unlearning. So we're not expecting to just have it figured out in the next week, the next month. I really think it's going to take years of unlearning, at least for me, probably a lifetime, honestly.
A lifetime, yeah. It's going to be like this, like ebbs and flows of being reminded of like, oh, I'm being toxic. Okay, surrender, toxic, surrender. Yeah.
So true. And so we see you in your journey, and we're right there with you. And we hope this conversation, as always, was encouraging, and just hopefully you walked away with some sense of freedom and a solution to this, and something to aim towards, and just release, more so than anything else, just release that pressure and that feeling and that weight that I think so many people, and especially women, just feel the pressure to do it all and to be it all.
Mm-hmm. And remind yourself, we'll leave it with this. Remind yourself your worth is more than what you do. And do the inner work aside from this episode to really discover what that looks like and means to you. And I promise that will be your anchor in this lifetime, in the struggle with this, but also just like in discovering your purpose. Go on a personal mission of discovering who you are apart from what you do. I'll leave it at that. I'm learning. I've learned a lot. I'm proud, but there's a lot to learn. So let that be our final token to you guys.
Okay, so for this week's Love Notes, we're like,
expose ourselves.
Yeah, we're like, let's just do something silly. So we are going to expose our text messages, phone calls. We're trying to get some juice. I know mine is not juicy.
Yeah, mine's always juicy.
But I'm excited for what Brie has. So I think first thing, who are our last 3 phone calls?
Okay.
People we talk to, though.
Yeah. Okay, yours first.
Okay. I was calling my husband, my friend Paula, and then the doctor, the eye doctor. Those were my last 3.
Okay, my last 3 phone calls was my mom, a guy that I've been seeing, and then my friend Lauren. Those are my last 3.
Ooh. Okay, text messages.
Yeah.
The last one I received was you saying 20 more minutes.
Okay, yes.
And then the last one I sent was to my mom, and I said, thank you.
Okay, the last one I received was a photo of a dog in a sweater. And it says,
amazing.
Playing with Tulip in the sweater. I think that's the name of the dog. And then the last 2 I sent was to you, and it said 20 more minutes still. I was in traffic. And then before that, it was to my friend Lauren, and I said heading out my door to you. So that's it.
Okay, guys.
XOXO, Gossip Girl. What's our last Instagram DM? That would be juicy.
Ooh.
Wait, let me see what mine is. Honestly, most of mine are like, so someone replied to my coffee story of like, I went to this coffee shop in West Hollywood, and she said, that's literally my fave. And I was like, it was so good. And then I got another one saying, keeping you in my prayers, because I had just shared, I shared on social media that I had a little car moment.
Oh, yours are so like, you have like the cutest girls in your DMs, like the most wholesome DMs. I feel like we both do.
Yeah, we do. I don't have any juicy ones.
So I'm in this LA surf group chat, and it is like always blowing up talking about like surf stuff. So that's fun. That was the most recent. Then my friend always sends me like the funniest reels. It's pretty much, I have like a few people that we like, honestly, like John and then my friend like send me so many reels and like that are relatable or like inside jokes, but they know I'm off Instagram and they'll continue to send it. So
when I'm not even seeing them.
I get back on, there's literally like 50, and I'm like, you guys, I cannot go and see these.
That's hilarious.
And yet they still continue.
That's so funny. Yeah, my DMs are so wholesome. Like literally, I feel like I feel like guys, whether it's like guy friends or guys that I'm dating, this is not applicable for Marissa. It's applicable.
I mean, my man's is in my DMs.
Yeah. Your man is in your DMs. But literally, I will have guys like that I'm friends with or dating basically allude like, oh yeah, you probably get so many DMs from guys. And I'm like,
you're like, honestly,
I actually don't. Like, I literally don't. Which is so funny. It's like all girls, which I'm obsessed with. That's like how I want it.
Yeah, that's the goal. That's when you know.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we hope you guys loved this episode as always, and we will see you in our next one. Bye. Thank you so much for listening. We pray this episode was encouraging and life-giving. If you found it valuable, please share it with a friend, leave a review, and subscribe.
And be sure to follow us along over on Instagram at With Love Always Podcast. Signing off with all of our love always, Brie
and Marissa.